Most men don't actually age. They just give up. And it doesn't happen with wrinkles or gray hair. It happens quietly, disguised as, "This is just life now." But here's what most men don't realize. There are men older than you right now. Yet sharper, calmer, more alive. Not luck. Not genetics. Not money. So what is it? Stay with me. Because once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. 1. You started lying to yourself. It never starts with a breakdown. Not with some dramatic failure. It starts quietly. You tell yourself, "This is just how life is now. I'll fix it later. It's not that serious." That's the first sign. Not that life is getting harder, but that you already know something is wrong. And you're trying to make peace with it instead of facing it. In psychology, there's a name for that tension. It's called cognitive dissonance. The stress that shows up when your actions no longer match what you know is true. When a man says he wants discipline, but keeps escaping into comfort. When he says he values strength, but keeps avoiding the hard thing. His mind feels the split, even if he never says it out loud. That inner contradiction often shows up as stress, guilt, self-justification, and mental fatigue. And that's why the damage is deeper than most men think. Because the body follows the mind. When you keep betraying what you know you should do, your nervous system stops trusting you. Your posture changes. Your eyes lose alertness. Your voice loses certainty. You begin to look tired. Not because time passed, but because your spirit stopped moving forward. You can see this in real life more often than people admit. A man knows his relationship is dying, but keeps saying, "We're fine." A man knows his body is getting weaker, but calls it, "just getting older." A man knows he hates the life he built, but stays because the discomfort of truth feels heavier than the pain of routine. That is how men fade. Not in one collapse, but in 1,000 quiet compromises. David Goggins spoke about this with brutal honesty. On his official site, he described a period after leaving the Air Force when he went from 175 pounds to 297 pounds and worked as an exterminator, saying it would have been easy for him to remain there, never finding out what was inside him. In the same interview, he says he looked in the mirror and saw a clown, and that facing himself changed everything. That's why his words hit so hard. I believe that in order to find peace, you must be willing to go to war with yourself. That line matters because it cuts through the lie. Most men think peace comes from avoiding tension. It doesn't. Real peace comes when there is no division inside you. When your standards and your behavior finally match. When your private life no longer contradicts your self-image. That is why honesty gives energy back. The man who stops pretending becomes lighter. Not because his life is suddenly easier, but because he is no longer spending strength protecting a false story. Marcus Aurelius said it with the kind of simplicity only truth can carry. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. So when you notice the signs, the dullness, the inner irritation, the loss of sharpness, the strange feeling that you are present in your life but not fully alive in it, understand what it means. It usually means you already know where you have gone soft. You already know what conversation you've delayed. You already know what habit is weakening you. You already know where comfort has replaced self-respect. And the right response is not drama. Not guilt. Not self-hate. Just truth. Sit still for a moment and ask yourself, what am I pretending not to know? Then make the answer concrete. If your body feels neglected, train today. If your work feels empty, stop lying about that. If your standards have slipped, restore one of them now. Not everything. Just one. Because the first act of self-respect is not changing your whole life. It is refusing to lie about your life anymore. And when a man does that, something returns. His mind gets quieter. His gaze gets steadier. His energy stops leaking. That is where youth begins again. Not in the face. In the truth. 2. You leak energy everywhere. It rarely looks dangerous at first. You still go to work. You still answer messages. You still do what needs to be done. But something is off. Your patience is shorter. Your sleep feels lighter. You get irritated faster. Even when nothing is seriously wrong, you still feel worn down. That's the sign. Not that life is too hard, but that your energy is leaving you in small, constant ways. You say yes too quickly. You stay available too long. You let noise into your mind all day, then wonder why silence feels uncomfortable at night. Most men misread this stage. They think they need more motivation, more discipline, more intensity. Usually, they need less friction. Because what drains a man is often not effort itself. It is unprocessed pressure. The American Psychological Association explains that stress affects nearly every system in the body. And that stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol change how you think, feel, and function. Mayo Clinic adds that long-term activation of the stress response can disrupt sleep, memory, focus, mood, and muscle tension. In other words, when stress never fully turns off, the body stops living in recovery and starts living in defense. That's why some men don't look tired because they worked hard. They look tired because their system never comes down. Always stimulated. Always reachable. Always consuming. Even if the pressure seems small, the accumulation matters. Cleveland Clinic describes sensory overload as a state where too much input overwhelms you and triggers a physiological response, with the sympathetic nervous system stepping in as if something is wrong. Their explanation is simple. When the system gets overloaded, everything starts slowing down or feeling harder to manage. That matters more than people think. Because when a man has no boundaries around attention, his mind never fully closes the loop. He keeps reacting. He keeps scanning. He keeps carrying invisible tension. And that tension becomes a face, a tone, a presence. You see it in the man who cannot sit in a quiet room without reaching for his phone. In the man who says he is just tired, but has not had a mentally quiet hour in weeks. In the man who gives everyone access to him, then feels secretly resentful by the end of the day. That is not maturity. That is leakage. A strong real-world example of the opposite is LeBron James. For years, people focused on the headlines about training and longevity. But one detail comes up again and again in reporting on his routine: sleep. In a widely cited interview discussed by Business Insider, James and his trainer emphasized that he aims for roughly 8 to 10 hours of sleep and treats it as the most critical part of recovery. ABC News also summarized the same pattern in his recovery approach: clean nutrition, structured training, and deliberate recovery rather than constant strain. That matters because the lesson is not celebrity lifestyle. The lesson is priority. He does not act as if output is the whole game. He protects restoration. And that is exactly what many men refuse to do. They want sharpness without recovery, strength without stillness, presence without boundaries. It does not work. The nervous system is not a machine you can bully forever. Cleveland Clinic notes that chronic stress and anxiety can strain the sympathetic nervous system over time. When that state stays active too long, the body pays for it. Mayo Clinic says the same pattern can show up as poor sleep, poor concentration, headaches, muscle tension, and irritability. So when you notice the signs, the constant scrolling, the short temper, the inability to sit still, the strange fatigue that sleep alone doesn't fix, understand what it means. It often means your system is not empty. It is crowded. Too many open loops. Too many demands you never consciously agreed to. Too much access given away in small pieces. And the right response is not to become more aggressive with yourself. It is to become more deliberate. Cut one source of needless input. Leave one draining conversation earlier. Protect 1 hour before sleep from noise. Stop responding instantly to everything. Not because you are fragile. Because you are responsible. This is where men usually get it wrong. They think boundaries make them colder. In reality, boundaries make them steadier. A man who protects his energy does not become distant. He becomes clean, clear, available for what matters, and unavailable for what weakens him. That is why calm men often look younger. Not because they escaped pressure, but because they learned how to stop carrying unnecessary pressure in the body. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius put it in a line that still cuts clean. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is the correction. Not control over the world. Control over what enters you, what stays in you, and what you keep feeding. When a man learns that, his breathing changes. His face softens. His reactions slow down. His attention stops being dragged in every direction. And what returns is not just energy. It is command. 3. You lost structure. It rarely feels dramatic. That is why men miss it. You still wake up. You still go to work. You still answer people. From the outside, your life looks fine. But inside, something starts loosening. Your body feels less capable than it should. Your emotions rise faster than before. Your days have motion, but no weight. You are doing things, but nothing feels anchored. That is the sign. Not that you are weak. Not that you are broken. But that your life has lost structure. And once structure disappears, a man does not usually fall apart all at once. He drifts. He negotiates with simple things. He skips training because today is busy. He reacts too quickly because it's been a long day. He loses direction because he'll figure it out later. At first, it sounds harmless. But what is really happening is deeper than behavior. Your nervous system is always reading your body. It is reading your breathing, your movement, your posture, your ability to handle load. When your body becomes passive, inconsistent, underused, the system does not interpret that as peace. It often interprets it as reduced capacity. And reduced capacity changes the way you meet life. That is one reason movement matters so much. Harvard Health notes that regular physical activity can boost mood, improve symptoms of anxiety and psychological distress, and help regulate stress-related chemistry. The CDC also says physical activity helps adults feel better, function better, sleep better, and reduces feelings of anxiety. In plain terms, movement is not just exercise, it is regulation. So when a man stops moving with intention, he usually does not just lose fitness. He loses stability. You can see it in ordinary life. A man used to train 3 or 4 times a week. Then work gets busy. Then sleep gets less consistent. Then training becomes occasional. Nothing serious happens in the beginning. But after a while, he notices he is more irritable in traffic, more impatient in conversation, more mentally foggy by the afternoon. He thinks the problem is stress. Sometimes the deeper problem is that his system has lost one of the very things that helped him process stress. That is why structure is not punishment. It is support. The same thing happens emotionally. Many men think emotional control means not showing emotion, keeping a straight face, saying little, acting untouched. But that is not control. That is often suppression. And suppression creates pressure. Kevin Love wrote openly about this after a panic attack during an NBA game. He described how he had spent years trying to be strong by keeping things in, only to realize that burying what he felt had a cost. His point was not weakness. His point was that silence without understanding can become another form of suffering. That matters because a lot of men are taught the wrong lesson early. They are taught to avoid emotion, not regulate it. So anger becomes the only feeling they know how to express cleanly. Everything else gets buried. Fear becomes irritability. Sadness becomes numbness. Confusion becomes distance. Then one day they say, "I don't feel like myself." Of course they don't. They have been carrying pressure with no process. Real control is quieter than that. It is being able to feel something fully, without letting it take the wheel. It is noticing anger rise, without handing your mouth over to it. It is noticing pain, without building your identity around it. That kind of emotional steadiness does not come from intensity. It comes from structure, from sleep, from training, from time alone, from routines that reduce chaos, from learning not to answer every feeling with immediate action. This is where men often underestimate routine. They think routine kills freedom. In reality, The right routine protects freedom. Jocko Willink's public philosophy is built on exactly that. On his official site, he frames discipline as the path to freedom. And in his FAQ he answers the question of how to build discipline with the same blunt pattern. Do what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. Wake up early. Train hard. Work hard. No shortcuts. No excuses. He also describes his own rhythm in simple terms: lift, run, ruck, surf, jiu-jitsu, every day. With consistency over excuses. That is why the line hits. Discipline equals freedom. It sounds hard at first. But underneath it, there is relief. Because once your standards are built into your day, you stop debating with yourself every morning. You do not ask your mood for permission. You do not wait to feel ready. You move because movement is part of who you are. You reset because resetting is built into the structure. And then there is purpose. This is the part many men ignore the longest. A man can still work, still provide, still stay busy, and yet be deeply without direction. That kind of life looks productive from the outside. But inwardly it creates restlessness. Because the mind does not just need tasks. It needs orientation. It needs something that asks more of you than repetition. Something you are building. Something you are growing toward. Something that forces adaptation. Without that, comfort becomes strangely exhausting. You begin to consume more and create less. You distract yourself more and respect yourself less. You fill time, but you do not feel movement. And that is one of the fastest ways a man starts aging inwardly. Not because his life is hard. Because nothing inside him is being called forward. Arnold Schwarzenegger recently wrote a line that captures this cleanly. Every day you do not start is still a step in one direction. And your body does not wait for some perfect future date. It is moving forward or backward right now. That is not just about fitness. It is about drift. That is the deeper point of structure. Structure is not a calendar. It is not productivity theater. It is not becoming robotic. It is building a life where your body is trained. Your mind is steadied. And your direction is not left to chance. So when you notice the signs, when your body feels softer, your emotions feel louder, your thoughts feel more scattered, and your days feel active but strangely empty, understand what it usually means. It means too much of your life has become negotiable. And the correction is not dramatic. It is exact. Train on a schedule, not on emotion. Sleep at a consistent time. Take your mind out of constant reaction. Choose one pursuit that stretches you and return to it daily. Not because you need a new personality. Because you need a frame strong enough to hold the man you are trying to become. When structure returns, your body stops feeling like a burden. Your emotions stop running ahead of your judgment. Your attention becomes cleaner. Your presence becomes heavier. And what people often call youth is not youth at all. It is a man whose system is no longer drifting. It is a man who has become internally organized again. 4. You avoided responsibility. It rarely sounds weak in the beginning. It sounds reasonable. This happened to me. I didn't get the same chances. I had no choice. And maybe some of that is true. But the real danger is not the event. It is the identity you build around the event. Because when a man starts seeing himself mainly as someone life happened to, something in him begins to go passive. That is the sign. His thinking gets softer. His standards get lower. He stops asking, "What can I do now?" and starts repeating, "This is why I can't." That shift looks small from the outside. But psychologically, it is one of the fastest ways to drain power. Martin Seligman's work on learned helplessness is built around this exact pattern. When people come to believe their actions no longer matter, they begin to give up, stop trying, and feel hopeless even when change is still possible. Psychology today summarizes the same core idea in simpler language. Over time, helplessness becomes a mindset of lost control, passivity, and negative self-talk. That matters because the body follows interpretation. Once a man keeps telling himself that effort changes nothing, his behavior begins to reflect it. He delays action. He lowers standards. He stops initiating. He waits more. And the longer he waits, The more stuck starts to feel like reality. That is how responsibility is lost. Not all at once, but through repetition. You can see it in ordinary life. A man gets rejected enough times, and instead of refining himself, he decides the game is fixed. A man fails in business once or twice, and instead of studying the mistake, he starts protecting himself from trying again. A man stays in a weak routine long enough, and eventually calls his resignation maturity. That is not peace. That is surrender wearing a calm face. A real example of the opposite is Jocko Willink's leadership philosophy. On his official site, the central idea of extreme ownership is direct. Leaders must own everything in their world. And discipline is treated not as punishment but as the path to freedom. Jocko's own framing is blunt: build discipline by doing what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. With no shortcuts and no excuses. That is why the line lands so hard. Discipline equals freedom. It sounds severe at first. But underneath it, there is relief. Because responsibility gives a man his leverage back. The moment you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is mine to do now?" your mind changes position. It moves from complaint to authorship. From memory to movement. From resentment to strategy. And strategy is energizing. That is why men who take responsibility often look calmer. Their energy is not trapped in blame loops. Their attention is not fixed on what should have been. They are too busy adjusting. Psychology Today notes that helplessness is tied to a felt loss of control that compounds over time. The longer a person experiences life as something they cannot influence, the more likely passivity becomes part of their identity. That is the deeper cost. Not just lost action. Lost self-respect. Because every time a man refuses responsibility for what he can still shape, he teaches himself that he is smaller than he really is. And that lesson ages him. His posture changes. His gaze changes. His standards become negotiable. He starts waiting for better conditions, better timing, better confidence. But helpless waiting weakens men. It puts life in charge and leaves the self behind. This is where responsibility becomes more than productivity. It becomes dignity. A man who takes responsibility does not need to control everything. He only needs to stop abandoning the part that is his. His habits. His responses. His schedule. His effort. His direction. That is enough to rebuild him. And once he starts doing that, failure changes meaning. It stops being proof that he is not enough. It becomes information. What did this expose? Where was I weak? What must I correct? That is a powerful shift. Because learned helplessness teaches passivity. But the way out is renewed agency, action, interpretation, and control over what can still be shaped. That is why responsibility restores vitality. Not because it removes pain. Because it removes paralysis. There is a reason Stoic writing still feels so sharp now. Marcus Aurelius put the principle in one line. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle is no longer your excuse. It becomes your material. So when you notice the signs, the quiet blaming, the constant explaining, the waiting, the nostalgic talk about who you used to be, the habit of thinking more than acting, understand what it usually means. It means some part of you has started to give away authorship. And the correction is not dramatic. Take one area of your life back. Fully. Not emotionally. Practically. If your body has slipped, train. If your schedule is weak, tighten it. If your standards have lowered, raise one. If you made a mess, stop explaining it and start cleaning it. Not all at once. Just enough to tell your nervous system the truth again. I still have agency. I still have a say. I am still the one moving this life. That is when something returns. Your mind gets quieter. Your posture gets firmer. Your energy stops leaking into resentment. And what people often call youth is sometimes just this: a man who has stopped waiting to be rescued by better circumstances and stepped back into responsibility instead. If you want, I'll continue with outro in the same level of depth, but still short. hard, and clean for voice AI. You don't lose your edge because of time. You lose it when you stop taking ownership of your life. Take it back. And everything in you starts to come back with it. If this hit you, subscribe to Silent Stoic. So each day, you become stronger and more composed. Now tell me, where in your life have you been giving your power away?